Hey, what's up? It's all Fonz, I want to ask. The Fonz. Today we're going to be continuing the Assistant Editor series and we're going to be talking about the Director's Cut. So welcome. You've processed all your dailies, you've organized all the scenes for your editor, and your editor has assembled the entire cut and is now ready to be shown to the director. We call this stage the Director's Cut. Personally, this is my favorite time of the editing process because I get to sit in the conversations between my director and my editor, and I get to really see how my editor handles these tough conversations, creatively and politically. So honestly, this is my favorite part of the editing process. I'm going to backtrack a little bit and just explain where we are in the process. So you've already organized all the scenes and processed all the dailies for your editor. The editor has made cut scenes and has assembled, the entire cut for what we call the editor's cut. And we deliver it to the director, and the director is the first person that will see this cut. And now is the time when the director and the editor will start working and getting, giving notes and, tweaking and figuring out which scenes belong where in the whole big picture scheme of the whole movie or TV show or episode. So now is the time when, you get down to the nitty gritty and you really try to tweak, all the plot points or, music cues and different types of changes to make the movie or TV show episode stronger. So this is the part where, a lot of in-depth conversations happen about, story points or character arcs and, the overall pacing of the movie. Like I said before, I really love this part of the process because I really get a chance to see how my editor handles tough conversations with the director. I actually remember this experience where my editor wanted to put music under a specific scene and the director didn't want to add music or any type of score under it because it would, take away from the quote unquote slice of life aspect that he was going for. But my editor argued that it would actually help the character's arc in this particular scene because it would supplement and amplify what they were going for, big picture wise. So they kept going back and forth here. They obviously didn't shut anyone down completely of the idea. They definitely thought it needed something, but they didn't know whether or not music was a good choice or not. So they went, back and forth on trying different music and trying different types of ways to cut into it. They just kept going back and forth and sometimes took the music completely away. And then finally, after, a couple hours, my director actually remembers something. He remembers that there was a record player in a scene previous to this scene and was like, maybe we should just use the record player. It wouldn't be odd if, music was playing in the background while these characters were talking. Let's meet in the middle and add the music over there, and maybe that could actually work. And sure enough, it did. That's when, that's how they connected the music together. And if you watch the scene again, it actually plays really well because they have both of what they wanted. My editor really wanted the music and my director didn't really want the music as a score. So they actually put two ideas together and it worked. That was sort of the back and forth that they were going with. And as an audience member, you would not really think about that. You wouldn't really see that or hear anything about it. You would just take that as it is. And you would not think twice that, oh yeah, they just put a background record or music behind the dialogue. But if you really are in the editing room, that whole process took about 3 to 4 hours to just nail down. So those are the kinds of conversations I really love, and those are the ones that happen during the director's cut. And you really can't find, or you really won't experience that kind of conversation because it's always closed doors. So as an assistant editor, this is why it's my favorite part, because I'm trying to be an editor. Most assistants are trying to be editors, so they really want to learn how to deal with these kinds of notes or how to deal with these kinds of conversations. So this is why I really love the director's cut. I've actually broken down 5 major responsibilities you have as an assistant editor during this stage. The first one is pay attention to your editor and director conversation. The second one is always be ready with an opinion. The third is to read the room at all times. The fourth is to take copious notes and to be a sponge. And the fifth is to actually build rapport with your director and editor during downtime or lunchtime. Like I said before, paying attention to the editor and director conversation is one of the best experiences to have as an assistant editor who wants to eventually edit. There's this long-running joke or this long-running statistic that 90% of an editor's job is actually how to handle people and how to handle the politics of editing, and then like 10% is actually the physical editing. I don't know. I think that's actually in some way somewhat true, but it just proves that this part of the process is very important, and this part of the process is always behind closed doors. No one's ever going to be sharing how they actually approach a scene, unless you're part of the crew, unless you're the assistant or the editor, obviously, and the director. So an exercise I actually do during this stage is I actually I type out the director and editor conversation as fast as I can. Obviously I'm going to miss a lot of things, because you also have to, take notes from, what your editor wants you to remember. But when I'm sort of idled and they're still, they're talking and they're trying to figure out what to do in the scene, I'm typing, literally transcribing like what the director wants the editor to do and what my editor's response is from what my director asks. I think it's a great exercise to do, especially because, what I do after that is I go home and I read through that reply or that back and forth, and I really learn. I really try to actually, without all the stress and without all the distractions going on, I really try to sit down and think, what was my editor trying to achieve here, or what was my director asking or requesting. I think that's a very powerful exercise, and it's helped me a lot. There's just a lot of things that I wouldn't have known how to do or wouldn't have known how to approach the conversation, without, reviewing these things on a daily basis. If you want to take this exercise a step further, I would just write the director's requests and just type in, what they say, and remove your editor's part of the whole exercise. And you can go home that night and you basically write out your response or your thoughts on how to approach what the director is asking. Try that exercise. I think it's a great way to really put yourself on the spot without having all the actual stress, as an editor. So, take advantage of this session. Take advantage of these experiences, because you're going to be an editor one day, and you'll have to answer to these requests and how to navigate through this, through the notes and navigate through these conversations. So this is why I do these exercises. And the next major responsibility is to always be ready with an opinion, right? The director obviously is going to be talking to the editor probably 95% of the time. And, that's just the dynamic of how this process goes. But directors are sometimes not afraid to call on you to give you, your opinion, to ask you what you think of the scene. It's happened to me a couple times, out of nowhere, the director just stops, complete silence, and then just goes, "What do you think, Alfonso? What do you think? How do you feel like the scene is playing?" That happens, and I have to come up, I can't give them a blank stare, I have to come up with a pretty professional answer, to help his or her thinking process, right? Every time I am watching a cut or I'm watching a scene, I literally just jot down a couple things on the side of my notebook or, whatever the page that I'm on. Obviously I'm typing up notes for my editor, but if there's some time in between their conversations, I obviously write, my opinion and just write down a couple things and just to make sure, just in case they call on me or my director calls on me and asks what I think about the cut, and sometimes, your head's so flustered that you don't have a second to really explain, what your real thoughts are. So a couple times I've been like, hey, I actually wrote down a couple things, on my notebook or on my laptop, and I'll read it back to you and see what you think. Like those are the conversations you're going to have, and don't be afraid to share what your actual thoughts are. Sometimes you have to also, this is the part where you have to also read the room, right? If the director honestly just wants like positive reinforcement, you can read that. He or she's having trouble like figuring out a scene, you have to read that. But if they actually say like, hey, like give me your honest opinion, like what do you actually think about this scene? Is it bad? Is it good? Does it work? Does it not work? But be very critical and be very specific. Say the music, there's something wrong about the music. I think it's the music. It's not hitting the right, pace or the right vibe of the scene, or maybe the line that the character or the actor is giving off, the performance isn't as good, in the dailies, because you've seen the dailies. You can say, isn't there's like a specific line that I saw in the dailies that I thought was really well, and I wanted to see if that would work better. So, really give them details. Details is great. I do want to bring up a side note that there's this thing called triangulation, where you're basically being the person who's in between the editor and director, and they're asking which cut is better, or which side, do you think, you should go with, right? An example is the editor, says, hey, this is what I did. And the director goes, oh, this is what I did, like, what do you think is better? And now you're stuck in between choosing the editor's side or the director's side. That's a very difficult situation to be in. And you really shouldn't be choosing sides at all. I mean, if you had to choose a side, always choose your editor's side, because it's just loyalty. It's just respectful. You don't want to have a conversation after the director session with your editor, and the editor is like sort of losing trust in you because you sided with the director. It's not that extreme, but if you're working at a new place, if you're working with a new editor, some editors really want you to side with them. You're their assistant, so if you have some doubts on what type of answer to give in that situation, always go with the editor. Another way to do it is to just say that both of you are right. You basically say, I actually really like what the editor did, but I also can see where you're coming from. I can't really make a decision. You sort of pose a question to them so that they can start talking about it again, so that the spotlight isn't on you. So I always just pose a question, be like, what exactly are you guys debating on? What are you guys not agreeing on? And that ends up like fueling more discussions between them, and then they start to actually like figuring it out by like talking it out. So don't try to have the spotlight on you. I think that's the best way to get out of that situation. But it's going to happen. It's a very creative industry. A lot of opinions are going to be coming in. So that, I think, is the hardest situation to be in as an assistant editor during this stage. So try to not be in those situations. And the third major responsibility you have as an assistant editor during this director's cut stage is to learn to read the room. If you were to take away one thing out of my YouTube channel, one thing out of my mentorship program, it's honestly to be able to read the room. This is the most important skill you need to learn as an assistant editor, as an editor, or in general in life, different social situations, professional situations, just anything that involves, having to be able to read people in unspoken situations. Reading the room means understanding unspoken situations and thinking proactively to either better the situation or to just let it be, not worsen it. So that basically is a huge skill that you need to learn. A little success story that came out of, reading the room in one of my experiences. I was actually shadowing or interning on a TV show, and there was going to be a huge screening happening right in our editing room. So it wasn't like a lot of people, but it was enough. One of the associate producers walked in and actually spilled a huge bag of almonds, like on the ground, like in front of everyone, all over our editing room. Me, without hesitation, picks up a bowl, picks up one by one all the almonds down on the ground, and she obviously was helping, but without any hesitation. I haven't even met this person, we didn't have a formal introduction, but me reading the room, obviously she felt embarrassed, she felt angry at herself that she just embarrassed herself in front of all these producers, but me just making light of situation, saying, hey, it's okay, we'll just pick it up, it's fine, we'll all be clean, it's only almonds, nothing's happened to the carpet, it's cool. Making light of situation. She eventually, the best icebreaker ever, she, obviously wanted to know my name. I was just the intern. She was like, hey, if you ever want to, learn about more of the post side of things, I'm happy to share and bring you to an ADR session, all these different things. So it actually helped out. And then a couple months later, she actually reached out because she remembered who I was, and obviously probably asked, recommendations from, the assistant editor I was shadowing, saying if I was qualified for the job. But she actually offered me a post PA job on her next show. I didn't take it because I was already on something, but see that those things happen, and me not being, if I didn't jump in and helped, with the almonds, or if I just didn't really act instantly or quickly, if I just let it be and she, picked, we would have never had this introduction. We would have never had, I would have never been offered that gig or, gone through all these cool experiences that she, offered me. So those are the kinds of things. I mean, that's a very extreme example, but reading the room will help you, if you can understand the situation without really calling something out, or just being intuitive and knowing what's really going on, and at all times knowing when to speak. This is a huge thing, especially I've been a part of crews where the assistant editor really wants to be an editor, and they sort of step out of line and talk during these director and editor stages when you're really not supposed to be talking during these sessions because you're not the editor. And they're always trying to like put themselves in front of the director so that they'll hopefully remember them for their next episode or for their future project. So those are the kinds of things where you have to really read the room and see, you can't be doing that. It disrupts the editor's flow, it disrupts the director's flow, and it just creates this weird environment. So make sure to really understand that, and you can't really learn this, there's no tutorial online to like read the room, but you have to do it through experience. For me, I always tend to err on the side of not talking or not speaking out if it's something I think is a little bit tense. If there's a lot of higher up people in the room where they're giving their own opinions, and a lot of things are being thrown out to the editor, and the discussion is pretty heated or whatever, that's when you start to like be a fly in the wall. You got to learn how to like understand that, like, okay, this isn't the right time to ask that question, or this isn't the right time to speak up with an idea that you had. Write it down and then talk to your director or editor at lunchtime or whatever, the producer. And then there are times obviously where you have to speak up. You feel like, oh, you don't want to be too quiet, right? Some people want you to engage in the conversation. So you just have to really learn how to see it and apply it and harness this. So yeah, reading the room is a very important skill. The next responsibility is to take copious notes and be a sponge. Honestly, you want to be able to present really well done notes to your editor and make sure, it's pretty organized so that they can follow and track what the whole director session was like. Personally, I like to type everything out because, sometimes my handwriting is not as good as what it is. And, you have set up a workflow for yourself and make it very easy and simple so that your editor can really track and follow how the editor and director session went. Also, be a sponge during this stage. If you really truly have questions that you want to ask your editor or director, write it down and then ask it, them during the downtime that you have. There are moments during this phase where obviously the editor needs some time to, do the notes that director needs. Maybe you can ask the director a quick question that you had, obviously read the room and make sure the question's appropriate. Don't step over your editor's toes, but just ask about the process. These are fair questions to ask. Learn that way. These are the moments where you have this access. You have access to brilliant creatives who make such great stories and make such great movies. So why not ask them questions that you have and learn the process that way? This is the time to really learn. This is the time to accelerate your career. As a filmmaker, I always loved watching interviews. So why not, ask some of my own questions to, directors or editors, whenever they have downtime. Remember, goes back to reading the room. There may be a cool shot that happened on set that, maybe the director has a cool story from. As an assistant, take advantage of these times to really ask those questions. And continuing on what I was saying about, being a sponge, you also want to build rapport with your editor and director, right? So, during lunch or during downtime, avoid questions about work and ask about, their weekend or hobbies or, their family or anything, to basically build rapport and treat them like a friend, and you want to get to know them as a person. And I think a lot of that will help. It makes the environment more like a family, sort of community feel to it, and this crew feeling to it, this spirit of teamwork or this spirit of being together and working on something will help you and benefit you later down the road. Yeah, always try to build rapport during this time. So thank you so much for watching my video on the director's cut. I hope you got a lot out of this with my stories and my experiences and all the tips I've given. I have a lot more other videos on YouTube, so definitely check them out. If you aren't following me yet, my handle is @AskTheFonz. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok. I'm on everything. So please follow me on all these different platforms. Also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It helps push this content out to all the aspiring filmmakers out there. So I really would appreciate it if you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you can see all of the times that I post a new video. So I really appreciate you guys could subscribe and help my channel grow. Lastly, I do one-on-one mentorship calls, so if you want to learn more about this topic, or if you have specific questions, or if you want to break into Hollywood editing, feel free to schedule a mentorship call at www askthefonz.com, and you can schedule a call over there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found something useful here. Until next time.